Okay, hi there and welcome to a short video where we're going to look at proposals from the UK Home Office to reform the UK's immigration system following our exit from the European Union. Initially, I think it's important to provide some context on the scale of emigration, that's outward movement of people, and immigration, inward movement in the UK. And as our chart shows, over the last 40 years, there has been a significant rise in both emigration and immigration. Net migration is the balance between the two figures, the balance between an inflow and an outflow, and it reached an annual peak of 343,000 in 2015, just a year before the EU referendum. Since then, net migration into the UK has declined quite sharply, dropping to 226,000 in 2019, according to the most recent data. There has been a steep fall in net migration into the UK from other EU countries in the years since the referendum. Indeed, the figure in 2019, if you look at the orange part of the chart here, the figure in 2019, 59,000, was lower than the level in 2008, 63,000, in the year of the global financial crisis. Now, this context, I think, is important. Net migration from the EU into the UK has been dropping for some time, and it poses an interesting question. Will it continue under the new points-based system favoured by the Home Office? Now let's just work through the basics of the new system. It's important to be aware of the system ahead of your 2020 economics exams. So here are the key basics. These rules take effect from the 1st of January next year, after the transition period has finished. Free movement, one of the fundamental pillars of the European single market, comes to an end. Workers will need 70 points to enter the UK under this new system. Fundamentally, they have to demonstrate they have a job offer from an approved employer, they have that the job offer is at the required skill level, and that they speak English. Students also covered by this points-based system. They are allowed to stay on for 2 years after they've finished their full-time degree. So this is a points-based system. The media call it an Australian points-based system. It's very different to Australia, and I think I would avoid the use of the word Australia when describing it in the exam. So the 70 points threshold is key. So to get 50 points, you have to have a job offer, a job at the appropriate skill level, and you need to speak English at the required level. That gets you to 50 points. Those are non-negotiables. Then you can start to trade, where you can pick up to 20 points if the job has a salary of £25,600 a year or above. That threshold has come down from £30,000. So anyone wanting to come to the UK to work must have a job offer with a salary threshold of 25,600. There's a lower floor in special cases where there's a skills shortage, for example. And then there's the other tradables. It could be that you could pick up 20 points if you have a job in a shortage occupation. The Migration Advisory Committee decide that. If you have a PhD in a relevant subject to the job, or if you have a PhD in a STEM subject, science, technology, English and maths, engineering and maths, relevant to the job. So you need to accumulate 70 points to break the threshold. The Financial Times reports that under this new system, around 70% of EU nationals living and working in the UK now would not have been able to enter the UK. The Home Office is effectively ending free movement. That's the fundamental point, and they're putting pressure on UK businesses and employers to find alternatives, assuming there's a fall off in net inward migration. They're looking for investment in technology, automation, and investment in human capital of the unemployed workforce. According to the data from the Migrant Observatory, about 1/5 of all low-skill factory and construction workers in the UK came from EU countries in 2017. And things like factory machine operators, 17%, drivers and mobile machine operators 11%, and so on. So if we think about the sectors most likely to be affected by this new system, I've picked out 5. Hospitality, clearly. Think about hotels and cafes and restaurants. Social care has been picked up in the media as a really fundamental sector which could struggle to get the workers it needs. People, for example, working in private sector care homes. Farming, fruit and vegetable picking and processing. Food and drink manufacturing, from making sandwiches for the airlines to meat processing for butchers and things. And construction, which of course does rely heavily on the self-employed. This chart from the King's Fund I think is really interesting. It shows that the average hourly pay for people in the care sector is well below, look at the orange dotted line there, the average pay is well below the rate paid in most UK supermarkets. Care homes, supermarkets are oftentimes competing for similar types of workers, and most supermarkets pay well above the minimum wage. Sainsbury's and Aldi actually pay significantly above that, as you can see. So why might this important reform be significant for your A-level economics? Well, consider first of all the impact on short-run aggregate supply. If there are some labour shortages in 2021 which perhaps cause wage rates to go up. Unemployment, of course, is 3.8% of the labour force. There's not much further it can fall given the different causes of unemployment. If the farm sector, if the food processing industries cannot find enough workers to pick the crops and process them, will consumers end up paying higher prices in the shops for basic foods, and could that have a regressive effect on families on low incomes? Or will migration controls, will this new system be positive in stimulating significant extra investment in automation? Or will firms, businesses operating in the UK, will they have the money and the motivation to train and employ more of the economically inactive population? Thinking more generally, there's a global market for talent, for talented people. Will Britain continue to attract talented people if it's seen as more hostile to free movement and putting this point system in place? The Home Secretary, the current Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has drawn some criticism for saying that firms should be looking to train the economically inactive. Something like 8.5 million people are of working age but not active in the labour market. Should businesses be spending more money training those people to bring them into the kind of jobs that will no longer be available to people coming from the EU and outside the EU? Well, it's an interesting idea, but it does tend to ignore the fact that there are many reasons for economic inactivity. Yes, there's about 8.5 million people inactive. Over 6.5 million of them don't want a job. Just under 2 million are looking for work. Many have retired early. Well, over 1 million people have retired early. Over 2 million people are long-term sick. Perhaps they have suffering from a chronic illness. Perhaps they're looking after a family or a home. Indeed, they may well be looking after elderly relatives. Nearly 2.5 million of them are students. So a sizable percentage of that 8.5 million, a sizable proportion, are actually not really in the market for work. Probably of the 8.5 million, about just under 2 million would be the scope for bringing those people back into the active labour force. So here we are. This is a new points-based immigration system. I think it's really important to be aware of it ahead of the 2020 exams. I've tried to stay clear of the politics of this. It's a deeply, deeply political issue as well, of course, in the context of Britain's departure from the European Union. All I will say is, had Priti Patel's points-based system been in place 50 years ago, her parents would not have been allowed into the UK. And on that point, I'll say thank you for listening.